Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another mini preview. Today, we're talking about Nanolith. Now, this is one that I've already done a mini preview on, but that was just solely based on playing through it on TTS with the designer and very, very much early impressions. And so there was a copy of the prototype kind of floating around America, and they were kind enough to send it to me. And so now I've gotten to actually play it in meat space, and I wanted to kind of just do a quick revisit of it and just kind of talk a little bit about my continuing thoughts and how they've grown and changed now that I've played it in person, because that does happen a bit. And I am happy to say that overall, my thoughts on the game do remain the same. And so I'm very pleased about that. And so if you want to kind of know more about how the game plays and things like that, go check out the other video that I have, and you can see and kind of go through that. I don't want to jump through and go back into all the ins and outs again, even though I didn't do it in super depth earlier. But so, story-wise, this is a cyberpunk future game where you are these characters that have kind of woken up from a cryo freeze or something like that, and you don't fully have your memory, and you're going to go out and do adventuring in the world, and the game's kind of broken down in between these kind of story that you get, and there's these, they call them kind of lobbies, which is just a page with some beautiful art on there and different places that you can go. You want to go through this door, then you go to this page, and maybe you just do some kind of test or a check, or maybe you actually play a battle or whatever. Or you go through here. Well, you're going through here. Do you have the key card to get in here? Yes, no. And so just things like that. But each of these lobbies will take you to different battles and fights where you're going to try to do things and accomplish things and so on and so on. And then when you get into your fighting, it's a dice placement, dice manipulation game where you roll a bunch of dice, and then you're using those dice to activate different abilities. You might need combos of dice. It might be just a single die. You might be able to use a couple dice to add up to a number that activates your attack, and so on and so on. But along with that, as you're doing that, you're building up this kind of stress as your kind of neural implants kind of heat up. And the more you use your abilities, the higher that goes. And then when it gets to the top, like, you get this uber power that you get to use, but once you use that power, your stress level or whatever resets, but the ceiling gets lower or the floor gets higher, whichever way you want to look at it. So you're going to overload again sooner. And of course, if you overload too much, then you lose the game, and that's it, you've lost. Back to what do I like about this game. First up, again, I still adore the dice placement mechanic. That's just something that I'm obsessed with, and this type of mechanic that if I were designing a dungeon crawl, that's what I would do. Of, using these dice, you have your dice, maybe there's some mitigation you're doing, and there is some mitigation here, and then you're activating abilities as you choose. You're making hard choices. I really like the dice play, and I still really like that. I think the art and the board and all, it looks really, really pretty. The characters and the story is very, very interesting. I'm intrigued by it, I'm engaged by it, and I'm still wanting to find out more and see what happens. I also, for the first time, got to do a boss fight, because before I didn't actually get to do a boss fight, and I got to do one, and the mechanics for the bosses are very clean, simple, very challenging, and it's fun. Now, when Canadian Kevin and I played, we didn't make it. We got waxed early on. We made some poor choices, which is something that I also like. Like, it's clear that you have to make good choices. There's no easy mode. It's not going to hold your hand and say, oh, well, let's just fix you here. Like, I made bad choices, used my items the wrong way, got our healer killed, and it was just downhill from there. We almost pulled it off, but who am I kidding? No, we didn't. But we brought it back a little bit. And so all of that, I like the core gameplay loop, the core gameplay arc, I do enjoy. But what I didn't realize, and I think I mentioned that I liked, what I didn't realize I liked so much is that stress mechanic. Because what happens is, the later in the game you go, when things are getting tenser and tenser, you're firing off that uber ability, nanoshock ability, faster and faster and faster, which is, of course, bringing on your own defeat. But the abilities are great. They're very powerful. And so you're just firing these things off, and you're manipulating, can I get it all the way up there so I can fire this thing off and do this thing? It's awesome. It's just awesome. That mechanic alone makes this game stand out and makes this a game that I'm very excited to actually get and play all the way through. Exceedingly great mechanic. I adore it. So what are my quibbles with the game? And my quibbles are, I don't have a lot. I mean, either you like the cyberpunk thing or you don't. Either you like this idea of you have this kind of board and you're choosing which direction you go and maybe you miss something, maybe you don't, or you don't, right? So it's one of those two things. The game does take up a little more space than I would have expected with it just being kind of a storybook, but not horribly, but it is a bigger table presence than I realized it was when I was doing on Tabletop Simulator. And I think that really the only core quibble that I have, I'm happy to say, is one that I know is being worked on. The rules and the rule book and the storybook, and as you're going through, it just needs a little bit of work. So when I played online with the designers, they were able to answer any questions I had immediately, so I didn't have to look in the rule book. They were able to say, okay, if you go here, this is going to happen. Go here, this will happen. So that was fine. But then when Canadian Kev and I played, like when we had questions, we had a hard time finding some of those answers. We weren't sure about some things. And the way the rulebook was laid out was a little bit more challenging. Following some of the story beats was a little bit more challenging. However, I'm also a backer on the campaign. And I've seen the recent update, which specifically is addressing that they are redoing the rules. They are redoing these things based on teaching people to play and learning that. So I'm confident that there's progress going to be made, but at this time, that's the biggest problem that is the biggest quibble that I have is the rules and the rulebook, and learning the game is harder than it should be. But there you have it, folks. That is kind of my revisit on Nanolith. I like this game. I think it's interesting. I love the mechanics. I don't usually love cyberpunk, but I'm interested in this. There's enough of this story stuff going on that I'm like, okay, tell me more. Which has me excited because it's just not usually the type of thing that I get excited about. I'm more excited of, here's my hierarchy, because you care, right? Fantasy, top. Then steampunk. Steampunk. Cyberpunk. Sci-fi. So it's not the top of my list, but it does have me intrigued. That's a big gap that I have in there. Anyhow, there you have it. So anyhow, if you're a dungeon crawl fan, adventure game fan, you like a relatively easy setup, and you like chucking dice and doing a lot of dice, then this is one that I do think you should check out, especially if you're into the cyberpunk theme. So there you have it, folks. That is Nanolith. As always, if you find this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.